Good evening. I hope everyone has been enjoying a good evening of nice conversation and good camaraderie and collegiality. I want to take a moment, if I could, and thank everyone in this room in a very special way for a day that I shall never forget. And I think this is a wonderful way to conclude what is probably one of the most important and enjoyable days of my life. But again, I think more importantly than anything about Jim Mullen, I think today was a celebration of what UNCA is and what it has always stood for and what it will continue to stand for. And I just, again, I want to thank everyone who was part of that. I want to thank Pat Snoyer for her leadership in putting that event together today. I want to thank Kevin Frazier for organizing all the delegates. I don't know how it happened, but somehow everyone got in line and it all worked out and they all got here. And I want to thank Marian Epstein. I want to thank everyone who played a role in that event today. And I want to thank, in a very, very special way, Molly Broad and Bob Broad. I said it last year at an event that President Broad was kind enough to attend, but I want to say it again because I think it sums up everything. The finest university system in the country deserves the finest president in the country, and ladies and gentlemen, we have it. Woo! Mary sends her love. She is home with the kids and the remnants of the Connecticut and Massachusetts and other folks who descended, but she sends her great love and appreciation as well to all of you. And if I could, opening tonight, say one more thank you. It is to Mary Shackles. Where is Mary? There you go. And to Kevin Frazier, who their energy, their work, on behalf of the alumni of this university is inspiring to all of us. I just want to thank you for what you're all doing. And finally, I see a dear friend has joined us. Mayor, thank you for what you said today, and thank you for all your support of the University of North Carolina at Asheville and what you do for Asheville. I am more convinced than ever that your university is poised for an extraordinary future. As I said today, this faculty and this alumni have joined together to build a magnificent and a very special place whose academic program is as strong as any in the United States of America, and whose commitment to intergenerational programs and to service will set a unique and powerful standard for the rest of this country to admire. And as I look around this room, I see alumni, friends, who are making a difference both for the University of North Carolina at Asheville and for the communities in which they live. I see men and women who really do every day live the lessons of the liberal arts. And I see men and women who are the foundation upon which we're going to build the future of this great university campus. I had the privilege earlier this evening to meet Leonard Rapport, the class of 1932, who's a renowned archivist and one whose love of the arts and of nature is an inspiration to every one of us in this room. And I see the students of today, and I was so honored that you joined me today, that you were part of this celebration. You made my day. And I want you to know that you are the rock upon which we're building this college. In particular, I see tonight the international students who give such life to our campus, and you are an inspiration to us in every way. So in that continuum, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, from Leonard to these students, we see the generations all linked together by love of learning, by pursuit of truth, and by loyalty to what this university stands for. And I am so proud to be your chancellor, and I am energized every day by the opportunity to join every one of you in making this university everything you want it to be and everything you deserve it to be. And tonight, we're joining together to honor one of America's great writers and one of this university's most remarkable alums. Wilma Dykeman represents all that is good in liberal arts education, and if I may say so, all that is good in humankind. Through her writing and her reflections, she calls all of us to see the magic of life and the joy of God's creation. In the opening paragraph of her wonderful book, Explorations, Wilma writes, "Memories are bonds with the past. Like all bonds, they hold fast and sometimes they hurt. But these are also a joining to others, to family, to friends, to strangers who have no names or faces for me, but spirits have shared the gamut of experience. Without memories, life would be a weaving with no designs, no color, no depth of perspective." And as usual, Wilma has said it better than anyone could. This Founders Weekend that we share is about memories. Memories that bind us to a rich history at UNCA. Memories that give us perspective and that weave together the tapestry that is our university's history. It's about friendships built here and lessons learned here. It's about lives shaped here. And it's about building from those bonds to shape our future. About building a future worthy of people like Leonard and Wilma and Ryan Southern, whose remarks today, I must say, earned him summa cum laude when he graduates from the University of North Carolina at Asheville, and all the other wonderful students who are here. So to the students here tonight, I want you to look to the example of Wilma Dykeman. I know your chancellor does very often. For in her achievements and her grace, she represents all we should want to be. Wilma, every dinner or every evening spent with you is a joy, and tonight I'm so particularly proud to be with you. And ladies and gentlemen, I stand continually proud to be your chancellor. Thank you.
On behalf of the 10,000-some alumni of the University of North Carolina at Asheville, it is my pleasure to welcome you this evening to our 4th annual Founders Day dinner. Begun by former Chancellor Patsy Reed, Founders Day is an occasion for us to pause and reflect on those men and women who were instrumental in the creation of our alma mater. Isn't it incredible to think that a small interest meeting at the new Buncombe County Courthouse in 1927 led to the creation of this great institution? From its founding as the state's first community two-year college to its national leadership in liberal arts education today, UNC Asheville has always been at the cutting edge of higher education, often succeeding in areas that others said were impossible. Every time I hear the story of our founding, my spine tingles and my chest fills with pride. It's a story of a group of men and women so committed to making higher education available and affordable for the people of Asheville that with very, very little money, they created a junior college and had the incredible foresight to not even charge tuition. While the Great Depression caused the school to implement tuition, we have never lost sight of the vision of providing students a quality liberal education for as little as possible. The values of this noble beginning have never left us. Today, UNC Asheville offers one of the top liberal arts educations in the nation at an affordable price. I know for me personally, higher education would have very much been unlikely if it had not been for public support. And it is such a pleasure for me to have been so privileged to have gone here as a student and to have earned my graduate degrees at public institutions who made it possible for students like me. Not only did I receive an affordable education at UNCA, but I received an outstanding education. The success of this university has been made possible by the dedication of so many. Whether it was A.C. Reynolds, who was one of the first to conceive of the idea of a junior college in Asheville, to William Highsmith, who led the transition to being a constituent member of the University of North Carolina, or to Philip Walker and his colleagues, who created our humanities program, or to John Stevens and Mike Ruiz, who first conceived of a national conference on undergraduate research, to the new professor who this morning was in her office helping a student with his calculus. The strength of UNC Asheville is in its people, which is why tonight it is so appropriate that we center this evening on recognizing an individual who has done so much, both for the university and for our nation. The Distinguished Alumnus Award was established in 1995 to recognize those graduates who in their personal and professional lives have exemplified the true meaning of a liberal education. The first award was given to Roy Taylor, class of 1929, the school's first valedictorian and noted and much beloved U.S. Congressman. The award was then presented to Professor Thomas Reynolds, class of 1937, son of our founder, A.C. Reynolds, and one of the most dedicated supporters of this university until his passing in 1997. In that year, the award was given to Emmy Award-winning TV journalist Michael Cogdell from the class of 1984 in recognition for outstanding service to his profession, his community, and of course to this university. 2 years ago, we recognized Wayne McDevitt, class of 1975, today the governor's chief of staff and one of the most generous public servants in all of North Carolina. And last year, the Distinguished Alumnus Award was given to Robert Peterson, class of 1957, in recognition for his outstanding service to the Asheville community and to UNC Asheville. This year, the award goes for the first time to an alumna, Wilma Dykeman, class of 1938. Ms. Dykeman, through her writing and activism, has served as an inspiration to writers and environmentalists for many years. To introduce Ms. Dykeman, it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Dan Pierce from our Department of History. An environmental historian, Dan recently published his first book, The Great Smokies, From Natural Habitat to Natural Park. Dr. Pierce.
It's a great thrill to be able to come up here tonight and introduce Wilma Dykeman. It really is a rare treat, and I use a word that we don't often use today, and that word is hero. And in my life, Wilma Dykeman has definitely served that role. I want to tell you a little bit about this woman and why she is so deserving of this award tonight. Wilma Dykeman is a native of Asheville and descended from some of the earliest European inhabitants of the region. She's a graduate of Asheville Biltmore Junior College, our predecessor institution, in Northwestern University. She's best known for her numerous literary contributions, which eloquently explore her love for the Southern Appalachian Mountains and its people. She's published, by my count, and I should have asked her for verification here, at least 20 books. 18. Now, how to get that? Okay. Okay, I was right. She got 2 on the way, and countless articles. Several of these have been done in collaboration with her husband, James Stokely. In her work, she has demonstrated an amazing versatility as her books include histories, fiction, and social commentary. Her historical works are meticulously researched and accurate in detail, which are crucial qualities in the discipline, as our history majors hopefully will learn. Most importantly, however, Wilma Dykeman understands what too many modern historians have forgotten. Historians are storytellers, and her historical works contain a lyrical quality that make them valuable and readable for both the scholar and layperson. Her first major book-length project, The French Broad, remains a regional classic. In this work, her artful observations of the patterns and paradoxes of, quote, a river and a watershed and a way of life where day before yesterday and day after tomorrow exist in odd and fascinating harmony, ring true even to this day. She has also written numerous volumes related to Tennessee history and serves as a Tennessee State historian. Her works of fiction highlight her skills as storyteller, historian, and social critic. As a novelist, Wilma Dykeman broke new ground in depicting Appalachia, not as the benighted home of ignorant yahoos or the over-romanticized caricatures of most earlier Appalachian fiction, but as real people, living, loving, struggling, failing, and even triumphing in a beautiful but often harsh environment. Her classic novel, The Tall Woman, depicts such a struggle as the mountain woman, Lydia McQueen, strives to not only survive in an often hostile environment, but to promote education and social justice in her community. As important as these literary achievements have been, however, it is her pioneering social activism, often reflected in her literary output, that I believe marks her most significant contribution. It should always be remembered that on matters of race, on matters of the environment, on matters of education, on matters of women's rights, Wilma Dykeman was on the side of right and justice when, unfortunately, the majority of people in this region and the majority of Americans were not. In fact, I told her earlier tonight, I said, you have been so maddeningly right on so many things. She's never flinched or held back in defending these values that she holds so dear, even in the face of ridicule and determined opposition. At the same time, however, she has not sought to instruct us as to the error of our ways or to berate us for our lack of intelligence and sensitivity. In pioneering works such as Neither Black Nor White, her biographies of W.D. Weatherford and Will Alexander, and indeed in all of her works, she has sought, and successfully so, to inspire and challenge us to find our better, more compassionate, and more just selves. The strong, determined, courageous, and compassionate pioneer woman often appears as a major character in Wilma Dykeman's work. Not ironically, these same virtues are the ones that make Wilma Dykeman such an endearing and enduring figure. The frontispiece of her novel, The Tall Woman, contains a mountain saying which serves as an appropriate description of the book's main character, Lydia McQueen. A tall woman cast a long shadow. This saying also applies to Wilma Dykeman. Indeed, she has cast and continues to cast a long shadow, and we at UNCA are privileged to call her one of our own. Thank you.
Can we go home now? What is this? Oh.
Wilma, it is our pleasure to present you with the 2000 Distinguished Alumna of the Year Award.
Oh, how lovely. I'm ready for us to all go home right now. But one or two people told me they'd come to hear me talk, and if I'd known that Molly Broad and my good friend Leonard Rappert and a few others were going to be here, I would have tried to be intellectual. If I had known that all of these students were going to be here, I would have tried to be inspirational. So really what I'm going to do, I just thought about this, and I just thought, we've heard such wonderful, uplifting and spiritual and informative things today, and I just thought I'd make this very personal. We're a small group here, and we're just sort of one family now if we're talking to the alumni here. So this is going to be very personal, and there's no expertise with it at all. I learned very early in life that it's very dangerous to try to think that you know everything for the situation, and I learned that at a very bad moment in my married life. You know, there comes the time when you have to have your husband's family to dinner. Well, cooking had not been at the head of my agenda when I was in college, although I did like to eat, and my mother, being very practical, had taught me a little bit about it, and my husband's family, unfortunately, had been in the food business. But I had to have them, so I prepared a dinner, and it all went really remarkably well. And I was so happy until I came to the dessert. And I had wonderful homemade ice cream with a rum and raisin sauce. And I got out my new sherbet dishes and I scooped out the ice cream. And I did not have enough for that last dish. I could not go back and scrape off enough to make another dish. And I couldn't say, well, I don't like ice cream, because the rest of my life, you know, they say, Wilma doesn't like ice cream, so, you know, forget her dessert. And then I looked over, and on the sideboard, I noticed some leftover mashed potatoes. And they're white. And I thought, well, this is wonderful. So I went and I made a wonderful scoop of mashed potatoes, and I slathered the sauce onto that. And so I know what you think. You think I gave that to my mother-in-law. I did not. I gave it to me. And I got all this around, and then I sat there, and I noticed that none of them were trying. Well, it dawned on me, I had to at least taste this. Well, I took a taste, and it was the worst thing I've ever tasted in my life. But anyway, everyone went ahead eating and remarking about how good it was, and then I noticed everyone was sort of watching me. And I looked at my plate, and you see, it dawned on me, mashed potatoes don't melt. They stood there firm and hard while everybody else was eating, you know, this ice cream. I had to eat the whole terrible dish. Simply because I didn't say, you know, I'm a novice at this and I didn't fix enough and all. I had to be the expert. Well, I've learned not to be an expert about anything. And I share that with you just to show you how we learn in life so many things that we need to know. So I bring neither expertise, but I do bring a sense tonight of being part of a very wonderful group here tonight. I see so many faces that remind me of stories and incidents and people, the past, the present, and the future. And it's a wonderful evening for me to receive this honor. Having heard these two blessed men, I hope this has been recorded, because this is my funeral. I mean, if they'll just bring that back in a few years, I hope not a few, but some more years, you know, who could do any better? And I've heard it. And, you know, I think one of the great things about Mark Twain was that he had Huck Finn and Tom Sawyer, you know, listen to the funeral. And I thought that's something we've all wanted to do, just to hear our own. So I've heard it tonight. And that's why I forgive the exaggeration, and I don't take it all to heart intellectually. But I do want to just share that along the way of my life, that I would like to share some little experience and insights that really begin right here with Biltmore College, which is what the university was before it became the university. In a recent interview, I was asked for the inspiration of some of my writing and speaking and my effort to communicate with others. And an answer came to me, and I just said it. I said, it was a deprived childhood. Well, people that had known me anyone would have thought she's lost her mind because I had wonderful parents and a deprived childhood compared with today in many ways. I was a child of the Depression because my father died when I was 14, and before he had died, much of his life savings and investments had been completely wiped out. And he was an older person, and my mother and I were left in circumstances much more constrained than he had ever imagined. And yet, I had everything. I had the memory of the parents who read, who cared about. They didn't talk about, you must become educated, you be educated. They read aloud to each other poetry and history and fiction, and they did this not for me, but for each other. So I grew up thinking that learning was exciting, it was enjoyable. Novels were fun, they'd laugh, and history was sad, and they'd cry. And some of the things they read were enraging, and they would discuss it. So here we were, and I was pretty soon going to be ready to go to college. Well, I'd set my heart on Northwestern, and Northwestern was a fairly expensive university. I wanted to go there because they had a wonderful speech department. It was near Chicago, a city I really wanted to know. There were a lot of reasons, some of them perfectly unreasonable, but I wanted to go to Northwestern, and I couldn't go for 4 years. And so I didn't do what many of my other high school graduate friends did, go to a local. I decided I wanted to go to Biltmore Junior College. So I came to Biltmore Junior College. And when I think back on those facilities, when I think back on that faculty, I am astounded at how much it meant to me. I look today at these wonderful buildings that are here on this campus, and of course I'm proud of them, and of course I want them to grow and be even better. Ours was one building. It's no longer even standing down on College Street. It was just one brick building, and it looked down over a very sad part of the town, which was where the black community lived. And I remember standing in some of those windows. I lived out in the country, standing in some of those windows on a very foggy winter morning and looking over that part of our community. And I think that must have influenced me, along with lots of other things. And when I think about what that faculty was paid, I am sure it would not be even the bonus that I hope some of our faculty receives today. And yet from them, I learned so much. I learned more than just what the subject was. And I took everything. When I arrived at Northwestern, of course, they'd never heard of Biltmore Junior College. It was accredited, and that's why they let me come, I think. They hadn't had anybody from this area before, and I guess they wanted diversity. And they got diversity with me. And so when I arrived at the registrar's office, I was invited in and said, "Tell us what you want to be accredited. Did you take everything that was there?" And I said, "Everything I could." I even took accounting. And if you knew me, you know that was a real investment in time and effort to take accounting. But I just thought, I never know what life's going to bring. I had discovered that, that life could be very iffy when banks failed and families changed and death came. Well, anyway, so I did take many of the subjects. It is not the subject so much I remember as that faculty. I remember how interested they were. Quite different. Certainly the English teacher was very different from the economics teacher. The one who taught biology was very different from the wonderful man who was the president at that time, Charles A. Lloyd, a very, very well-educated man who wrote a wonderful book called We Who Speak English. And he had even a radio program talking about using the English language effectively. So all the diversity of these, but they had one thing in common. They were there, I'm sure, because they wanted to teach. They certainly weren't there because they wanted to get rich. They certainly weren't there because they wanted prestige. And of course, most teachers today are not there. But I think back upon these teachers and I think, I just wish I could call you back for 10 minutes and tell you how much you instilled in me a sense of curiosity. And to me, that is the basis of so much of our education, is to make people curious about the world, asking why. Why am I here? Why is the weather like it is? Why are the people around me as they are? And why is the environment as it is? Curiosity. And these people really, I think, instilled or encouraged that sense of curiosity. And then they really made an effort to help fulfill and bring answers to those questions that were there. And so in this very small place, I guess, I had a deprived childhood as far as maybe fancy clothes. When I arrived at Northwestern, here was this great campus. Here were these people, even in the Depression, that had cars. One of my roommates had a, yellow convertible. Yellow convertible? And one was from Lake Forest, and she had this wonderful background. Well, we all became really good friends because I educated them too. I just showed them that, you didn't have to be in a yellow convertible or from some of these other places to be interested and to be active. And so I learned again about diversity there. But in this small place here where I lived, I also became aware of the environment. Growing up out in North Asheville on Beaver Dam Creek, at a place where behind the house every spring a wonderful array of wild azaleas flamed, as Bartram said, flamed in the woods. And the yellow lady slippers were there. All of these gifts, nothing had to be planted. These were all gifts that were there. And when I traveled away, I went to visit my father's family in New York, and I found that they didn't have these gifts there. And so I became so aware, I think, subliminally. We never talked about the environment. We were just part of it. And it was just part of us. And I think that that's one of the things that today we need to absorb more completely, is the sense of this world that is around us. And so the Depression, as I say, hit very hard in Asheville. I remember as a little girl going down along the streets in Asheville and seeing other little girls, younger than I was, barefooted, with a little thin dress and a little ragged sweater on in winter, selling Galax leaves. And my heart just bled. I mean, I'm sure that, that I pestered my mother to buy we had Galax leaves all over our yards, but I wanted to buy every Galax leaf I could see. These little girls, I wondered what they did. But to see people coming over through the mountains, crossing the mountains and walking down the road in front of our house there with herbs to sell. And seeing the situation of people here in this town during the Depression gave me a sense that there are inequities in life and that sometimes we do not know how or why they came about. But as I said, I had set my heart on going to Northwestern, and as I look at this campus and compare today the way it is, we had a library in one room. We had athletic equipment that I think Leonard told me once much of it was borrowed, probably begged, borrowed, or stolen. And everything was minimal, again, except the faculty. And I want to particularly leave that here because it seems to me that the social life that was so simple was also so incorporating. It was also a part of all of us. If someone had a car, we all got in the car and did this. And if we couldn't do that, we would do such simple. A kindergarten person today would be bored with what we called our social life. And yet it was social because it included all of us. and we were excited, and we made up a lot of our own efforts. It did work. That faculty, the energy and the imagination and the dedication they put into it, it worked, I think. Leonard Rappert is here. He has been one of the mainstays at our National Archives there among all these scholars. His neighbors there on Macomb Street are some of the famous people in Washington. Of course, he doesn't talk about them. He talks about the woman that he takes wood to there, because his hobby is going out and finding in Rock Creek Park a tree that's down, and he's always loved to chop wood. So in Washington, and they greet him. I mean, there's nobody on the Hill, as they say, in Congress that could go to see them, that they would welcome, like Leonard Rappert, bringing them some wood for their fireplace. So, it's these eccentricities. These eccentricities. He knows, like our teachers did, that it's more than books, learning is, that neighborliness is more than belonging to the same club. It's also, no matter where you live, and how much you know, it's taking wood to somebody and not being ashamed that you're interested in wood, for crying out loud. So, as I say, I think that it did work. At UNC today, I see Biltmore College writ large. It's buildings that are so impressive but need constant care and improvement. And those are resources that we must bring to them. Resources of research and creativity as well. And the sciences and the art that bring honor as long as we assure their support and growth. But above all, it is the spirit that is here. It is the spirit that has continued from those early days, that this has a meaning. It is here for a reason, and it means more than just to the individuals that are here. It means something to the society of this region, and therefore to the society of this country and to the human society as well. And so from our own little corner of this country, we have the agony and the joy and the delight and the labor of learning for those that work at this university and those of us who would like to inspire and help it. And certainly now we have a chancellor who has this vision, and I think has articulated it in a particularly simple and impressive way. It's so simple that all of us can understand it, and it is so complex that we will all have to realize how it does challenge us. One of our own poets, one of our past poets, has spoken of knowledge carried to the heart. We represent knowledge here. The faculty, the learning, the buildings, the library, the science laboratories represent knowledge. But it's the leadership, it's the faculty, it's all of the leadership of this that means it's carried to the heart. That means to the innermost synthesis of our lives with the outer life as well. I read a quote, I think it was from Einstein recently. It was not his recent statement, I read it recently, in which he asked the question, where is the wisdom we lost in gathering information? I feel overwhelmed by information. I realized recently I was taking about 17 publications, ranging from some very esoteric ones to some of the ones we all read. And I wasn't reading more than the cover of any of them, practically. And it's information. But I wasn't getting very much wisdom. I feel a great loss and a great need for wisdom. And I think that's one of the things that we need to inculcate in our families, ourselves, our institutions, to search that information is resolved into the wisdom that lets us keep this earth whole and lets us keep our human society on earth together. So I believe in Biltmore College. I didn't just get information. I got a lot of information and learning at Northwestern, but I believe that I got a measure of wisdom from those people who received so little pay but gave us so much in return. And I hope my memory of them is part of their repayment for what they gave us. Thank you very much.
As we close today, I am very much reminded of a theme that seems to be a thread throughout the day: the importance of university to community and community to university. I'd feel remiss as a historian, a particularly historian of Asheville, if I didn't close with one small story. Today in installation, I evoke the memory of D. Hyden Ramsey, who is an Ashevillean for whom I had the privilege of doing some research for my own doctoral dissertation, and was very fascinated by this incredible citizen. And a story that I came across several years ago, while actually doing research in the mayor's vault, had to do with the seal of the city of Asheville. In 1919, Ramsey, who was pretty well fresh out of school himself and was in his first life as a public servant, as director of public works, said at a city council meeting, "We need to have a new city seal. Ours is not very inspiring. Asheville is a much greater city than our city seal presents." So a contest was held, and submissions were called for throughout the city, and the winner would receive $10. A local jeweler came up with such an impressive design that they gave him $25. The seal, with which most of us are probably familiar, depicted at its center Mount Pisgah, our nearest high peak, and the adjacent range, which locals will know probably best as the Rat. At the center was this mountain that is so omnipresent for us in Asheville. It was captivating to the members of City Council, particularly to Ramsey himself, who then added that one little bit of Latin that we know we talked about today: Levo oculos meos in montes. I lift mine eyes into the mountains. Now, one of the things that I find really fascinating about the fact that it was Ramsey who had called for this is its tie back for us today. Because you see, this seal was mutated a little bit when Asheville Biltmore was part of the city school system. And Asheville Biltmore, in fact, adopted the city seal as its own, changing simply the name and the founding date. We know this is our university seal today. For me, I find is one of the great twists in history is that the only place in the city of Asheville to see that seal depicted exactly as it is from the steps of D. Hyden Ramsey Library. And it's always such an inspiration to walk out of the doors of that wonderful library and see Mount Pisgah in the distance and know that our campus is centered on it. It reflects the centering of our campus to our community, both to Western North Carolina and to this great city of Asheville. I ask as we close to think of our university motto, Levo oculos meos in montes. Let us do as our founders have done for some 73 years. Let us continue to lift our eyes into the mountains as we continue to build at the University of North Carolina at Asheville a great institution of higher learning. Thank you so much for being part of this Founders Day dinner. Thank you for also being part of this wonderful installation weekend. We are so glad that you could be part of the continuing history of our university. Thank you and have a great evening.